Hello, we're making this video for the CIT 260 class. We are going to explain a little about our program. Its name is the Pioneer Trail. Well, we are not too good at coding, but we are trying, so don't be rude with our work. First of all, we're going to start to show um, the 7 steps of the functional development process and how we use them for our code. For the, I'm going to explain the wagon control class, and it is right here, the wagon control class. As we see, we had a problem that we defined that it was impossible for us to move through the long way with so much weight over our wagon. So we need to create a formula to make it possible to collect items and put them over the wagon. So right here, we create a test matrix and we create a solution and an algorithm that we add so make it possible. And then we convert everything into code. So we have right here for the new weight that will be the result of the resources over the wagon. So right here we have that the total resource weight will be resource dot get weight times resource dot get count. And if the total resource weight is more than 350, or if the total resource weight is less than 0, it will return -1. That means that it will return an error. So we're just allowed to have a weight of 350 pounds plus 150 pounds of the usual weight of the wagon. So if we try to run this, it will look something like this. Right here in the wagon control test, we are gonna run it. We're gonna to test file. We worked with different variables so we can get the right result. Um, as we can see right here, where is the wagon control test, we are gonna create a new case for the new wagon with a new resource that we are gonna add to the wagon. So in this case, the weight of the wagon always will be 150 pounds plus the weight of the resource, in this case 150, times two resources. We have to stuff this resource, so it's gonna be 300, and the expected result is 450. So that should be the result for test case number 1. So let me test the file again. And as you can see, the result for case number 1 is 450. So now my partner will gonna explain for the toolbox control.
Okay, so the toolbox control actually is meant to determine the maximum weight of the toolbox and the resource items. And in calculating for the toolbox, the maximum weight of the toolbox, we needed first to calculate the weight of the toolbox as well as the resources, which we have references to the resource model as well as the toolbox model. In the toolbox calculations, we have figures that at least should be the maximum number of resources that should be contained in the toolbox. And from what we have, we said that the toolbox should be the volume of the toolbox should be greater than 350 and should be also equal to or less than 0. And in running that, we are supposed to have a return of -1. And we'll try to run the test for this toolbox for us to see what happens at the end of it. Okay, so from running our toolbox, we could identify that when our set weight is 2, we are going to have this result with us. But if in case we change any of the values, that means that our results are not going to be exactly what should be expected. And my companion will try to make some few changes on the values so that we'll see the difference that will result to. Identify that after changing these values, we had a failure in our test results. And the result that came up after case 1 was 20, which wasn't the right value that was expected. And these are some of the changes that do occur when we don't get the right value for the items we need in our toolbox.
Now that we have seen the 7 steps and that we have the test cases, I'm going to explain how the select statements work. So we're going to go to the main menu view. Right here in this part, we have different ways to explain this. In this part, we're going to display what's going to be after starting the game. First of all, we're going to ask or prompt the user after starting the program and asking the name of the user. We're going to have this option. You select between the start new game, restart existing game, or help on how to play the game or exit the game. And we have to specify a value. If we don't specify the correct value by writing these letters, we're gonna be shown an error. So we're gonna have to introduce a valid statement or a correct letter. In this case, we have see how it will work. We have the case N, that will be the name for the start new game, and the R for the restart existing game, and so on. So we're gonna have the case N to start a new game. If we select it, it will run right here, the start new game. So it will gonna create a new game. If we choose a different one, it will make the restart game or the go help. In case that we select the E case, in this case, it will take us out of the game because it is an exit, so it will not show anything. That's why in this case we don't have a break, because the break will not be useful for the situation, because we are supposed to introduce a value that it's gonna take us to a different menu. So in this case, these letters are gonna take us to different views. So that's how the select statements works. We can select, and if we choose or enter an invalid input, so it will not show anything. It will show a error, like we can read right here. It will show an invalid input. So we need to choose the right letter if we want the select statements to work correctly.
Okay. So now what we have. Okay.
Now my partner is gonna talk about the variables and the life scope, lifespan and scope, and all that stuff for the variables, scope
All
and
right.
lifespan.
So
Sorry. Yes, go
yeah.
ahead.
So when we talk about scope, actually, um, the scopes are every identifier that are being created in a function. So when we look at this wagon control function class, we will realize that we have some functions which are located within the wagon control function, and these are examples of scopes that we do have in functions. And one other important thing that we might want to keep in mind is the identifiers are accessible and also in that function and nowhere else. Probably it is local to the function, that if we could say. So all what we find in this function are meant to be for the wagon control function, and it's not meant to be for other parts of the function. Now, when we talk about lifespan of variables, it helps us to understand that there are variables that live. Okay, um, their duration depends on the time given. Probably we might also say that um, during the execution, that's a variable have memory and retains its value. So in what we have here in our wagon control, we will realize that we have a function, we have an equation which is being given, and once we are done with it, we realize that the return of it falls beneath it, and there's another calculation which is being done, and the result goes back to the double total weight function, where we are going to have a return of -1. And our lifespan of a variable helps us to understand that the variables are created and when it was destroyed. It helps us to understand when variables are created and when they are being destroyed. And that's when values are being changed in an equation. That's when we realize that the variables have a lifespan. The speed of it also determines the lifespan of the variable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
now I'm gonna talk a little about of how the arguments are passed by value and passed by reference. So to explain this example, I'm gonna go for the game menu view. In this part of the game menu view, we have right here at the bottom a variable for the help menu view. In this case, we're gonna create a new help menu view. In reality, this is a value passed. Um, sorry, it was passed by reference because we have a help menu view right here. So what we are doing in this part is that when we are gonna run this function, it will go to the reference of the help menu view. It will copy and create this help menu view that will be a new, and it will display like if it was the help menu view. That's when we pass the reference. In reality, is it is reference to a different class. So in this part, it was reference to a different class, so we can make it run. Um, for pass by value, we understand that the primitives are always passed by value. So in this case, we're gonna go for the resource item right here in the sorry right here in the resource. We have we have a weight. We don't have at this moment a value assigned to it, but if we would like to make it to be passed by value, we can just assign a value to it. Maybe it could be a number like 18 dot or 5, or we can decide what value to give to it. So after that, we're gonna be able to pass this value by this this method to sorry. We're gonna be able to pass it as a value, but first we need to assign a value. So after that, it will be easier to go and use it. Example at the wagon control. Where is it? Wagon control right here. We have we have the option to use the get weight because we don't have a value mm, assigned to it. But if we have a value assigned, we can just get the weight and it will be given unto us. Then, so maybe it could help us to better understand how it is passed by value or by reference. And now my partner is gonna tell us a conclusion about our project at this moment.
Okay, so the main idea of our project was to kind of develop a game whereby a user could select an option for it to execute for him, and in the end user's game actually is to help us to understand how Java works really, and how an end user actually can enter, put in an input, and also with what we've built up as our code will generate results for the end user, which will incite him or her to enjoy playing the game. Probably during the game, they might come across some difficulties where the end user will have to go to the help menu to seek for directions and come back to continue the game. The game can be saved and continue later on. There are resources whereby the end user might want to select any of them to use during their journey in the game. Actually, this is how our game looks like, and we are almost halfway of it. And this is Nephi and I, my own reader. We came together to put up this short video. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.